Hello, good evening and welcome to episode 10 of the eFootball podcast. Yes, that's right, we've hit double figures. Unfortunately though, we've only got single guests, but that's no bad thing because he's back. It's James McCarthy. James?
Hi mate, how are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Tell us, how was Ed Sheeran? We all need to know after your absence last week.
It was brilliant. I definitely elbowed a few 13-year-old girls out of the way to get close to the front. Yeah, it was great, yeah.
That's absolutely how it should be done. You know, I don't condone elbowing 13-year-olds usually, but if you're going to go and see Ed Sheeran, you've got to really get amongst them, haven't you? So, fair play. I mean, if you're going to miss a podcast, I guess we can be...
Yeah, it's a worthy excuse for not being here.
Absolutely. So I'll let that one slide. But I guess where else do we start with the North London derby? I mean, there's no secret of the fact we're both Spurs fans, so we'll try and not be crowing too much about the delights of Sunday, but we have to a certain degree. So James, over to you.
Well, a perfect day, wasn't it? Really, it was the perfect game for me. I think the thing that stood out for me, that it's so much in the North London derby. I'm smiling so much right now, even just talking about it. Is that it was just so routine. It was just a routine victory. We've definitely faced harder teams at White Hart Lane this year. I guess you could argue it was a good time to face Arsenal, with them being down in the dumps with pretty much everything they do turn into rubbish at the moment, and us flying high, confident. But it was just an absolutely brilliant day all round, and a great send off to White Hart Lane, a fitting last North London derby at the Lane. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from that point of view, you know, from that aspect of the send off in regards to North London derby, you couldn't ask for much more. I did have a feeling, I don't know about you, but in the first half when Dele Alli and Christian Eriksen both missed those gilt-edged chances, did you perhaps feel at one point or at that sort of halfway through the first half that it might not be our day, or were you confident throughout?
A bit of both, really. You know, you always know with Spurs, when we miss those kind of chances, you know that the other team are probably going to go straight out the other end and knock in a fluky 30-yarder or something. But then again, there was just that kind of feeling that Arsenal didn't look like scoring. I can't think of one time, especially during that first half, when I thought, do you know what, they're going to score here. We were completely in the driving seat, completely in control. There wasn't an area on the pitch that they looked better than us, and they were lucky to go in at half time at 0-0. So, you know, it was. I was pretty confident that we were going to get a goal from somewhere. It was just the old Spursy aspect of it that we really wanted to cut out, and thankfully we did cut it out. You know, we looked better than them in every part of the pitch. At the back, we were reassured. We were absolutely solid. In midfield, especially, I think Victor Wanyama, I haven't seen a performance like that from him for a little while. He's been an absolute rock this season, but not as good as he was in the derby, and he was absolutely brilliant. He was the driving force behind counter-attacks. He wasn't just doing his normal sit in front of the back four, mopping up job. He was driving forward. He was getting involved in the attacks. Eriksen was pulling the strings. Ali's causing problems all over the park, and obviously Harry Kane doing what Harry Kane does so well, and slotting that penalty so confidently under the pressure he was under. Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely beaming thinking about it now. It was just awesome, and I just wish I was there.
I think we all wish we were there, to be honest. I mean, you could have sold that fixture 3-4 times over. But, yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. I've still sort of got a smile on my face reading about the game. It's Tuesday night now, and I think that smile's not going to go away till at least Friday when we play West Ham. But what I was going to say is, do you think Arsenal perhaps got it wrong, the fact that Wenger went with Giroud up front? His immobility has once again sort of hampered Arsenal's attack line, and also do you not perhaps think that Rob Holding should have played as part of the three at the back after his impressive performances of the last, I think it was at least 2 games he played previous? Do you think they were sort of key mistakes in terms of Arsenal personnel?
Yeah, it was a weird one when I looked at the team, because as well as Rob Holding playing really well in that left centre half role in the three at the back, Monreal's also been playing really well at left wing back. So you'd have think it would have just solved all their problems to put Holding in at left back, and then Monreal in at left wing back. But you know, we don't know what's going on in Wenger's head. I don't think anyone knows what's going on in Wenger's head at the moment. Giroud is a bit of a weird one, because you know you say he's immobile, but he's got a hell of a good scoring record as someone who hasn't started the majority of his games at Arsenal. He's really well, really good at scoring. But I look at the other options: Danny Welbeck, for one? He probably wasn't fit enough to start the game. I know he came on, but did he really do anything when he came on? Theo Walcott, can he play that centre forward role? Would you even put Alexis Sanchez there and play someone else a bit further up? We don't know what's going on. The manager selected the team that he selected, thinking that would be good enough to win. But to be honest, I don't think any of the changes that he could have made would have stopped Tottenham on Sunday. I think they were just in rampant form. And in that kind of form, I don't think anyone can beat us at the moment. We come up against Chelsea playing that well, then we're going to beat them. If we come up against anyone playing that well, I really don't think that anyone's got the beating of us. I couldn't see Arsenal scoring at any point. And especially when they made their changes, Theo Walcott and Danny Welbeck, I thought that they're running at tired legs, but they really didn't knock us at all. And it was 3 points in the bag and a party atmosphere.
I think you've got to remember how ominous Tottenham are at home, because they haven't 18 games now at home. I think it's 115 drawn 3. I think, don't quote me on that, but I'm sure that's the stat. But Arsenal in the first half, certainly. I mean, the only chance I can remember of note was when Aaron Ramsey stung Lloris's palms with about 5-6 minutes to go before the break, and that was probably their only chance. Welbeck, to his credit, perhaps stretched Tottenham a bit, but even then it never really looked sort of dangerous. It never looked like there was going to be that consolation goal from Arsenal in the grandstand finish. And do you not think also perhaps that Sanchez, he looked like he was just wanted to do the sort of vanity shots, never really wanted to sort of play for the team. He was always looking for that kind of goal that he could point to himself and say, no, I'm the man. It was another sort of performance where him and Ozil went missing again. And if you're sort of asking for 250, 300 grand a week, it's another sort of a red flag to think, hang on, is this really value for money? Do you not think?
Yeah, the Sanchez thing, I mean, you can criticise him for I mean, I know it's probably from match of the day that you're getting that, because I know they picked it out at one point that, Sanchez picked the ball up 30 yards from goal, drove forward, and instead of trying to pick that pass, he went for the speculative top corner effort. But then again, you can criticise that, but that's something that Arsenal need. They need someone to pick that ball up. They need someone to be a bit selfish. That was probably his way of trying to pick the team up. Yeah, he might have picked the wrong pass at the wrong time or gone for goal when he should have passed, but they definitely need someone with a bit of up and go. And at least Sanchez was trying to give them that. Ozil, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. He seems to be picking up the ball and nudging it sideways when you want him to be doing what Ozil does so well and picking out the Hollywood passes, even having a go himself. And he looks like the complete opposite of that. He for me, looks the more disinterested of the two. Although Sanchez is more likely to throw a strop and have a grumpy face on him, I think Ozil's definitely the dark horse really to say he wants to leave the club to throw his teddies out of the pram,
On reflection, that's a sort of fair point, because if you had to sort of pick one of those two who's going to at least try and turn the game, it was going to be Sanchez. But questions will be raised not just about Ozil and Sanchez, but Arsenal's lineup completely and the sort of personnel that was used. On the same point, we'll go to Tottenham's personnel and their lineup. The big talking point has been Kyle Walker over the last 7 days, or perhaps a little bit longer with the FA Cup semi-final weekend before last. Do you think that Trippier was the right call? If certainly, North London derby, but do you also think he was the right call against Chelsea in the semi-final as well? And is this pushing Walker out of the exit door, or are we sort of now in that end of season rumour mill, picking up pace, and this is the sort of first name that's going to be a transfer saga over the close season? What's your take on matters at right back?
I think it's a very weird one. Don't get me wrong. Who is the better player out of Kieran Trippier and Kyle Walker? It's Kyle Walker all day long. Kyle Walker's the England international. He's the man who's been part of the most formidable defence and one of the most formidable attacks in the league. There's no questioning for me that Kyle Walker is the better of the two players. Yeah, Kieran Trippier is in very good form. He's played some very good matches. Kyle Walker is probably restricted to only one match a week through fitness. And he's filled in brilliantly when he's been a deputy. I think the semi-final will have just been a nod to that, a nod to the fact that Trippier has played the cup games and it's Pochettino staying loyal to him throughout that. I think if Michel Vorm was fit, I think maybe even he would have played the FA Cup semi-final in the same thought. He's been part of the cup team, and it would be unfair to drop him now. As regards to Walker moving on, I think it's something that will be resolved fairly quickly. It's Pochettino, the squad, the backroom staff. It doesn't look like the kind of atmosphere that a sort of a bust up would happen. I can't see Kyle Walker being unhappy over missing out on these two games. I can't see why he didn't start the North London derby. That is the only thing that sways me a little bit. I am a little bit concerned about that because it's a big game. Kyle Walker is a player for the big games. He turns up. He's a brilliant player. So with regards to that, I'm not really sure what's going on there. But I mean, I for one certainly would not like to see us selling Kyle Walker. And if we are to maintain our status as a top 4, top 2 even club, I think we really need to keep hold of players like Kyle Walker, and especially if someone like Man City comes knocking, because their defence is something that needs sorting out drastically, and I think he's the kind of player that would be able to do that. So I'd love to see us keep hold of Kyle Walker, and it's a weird one because if 2 weeks ago someone came to you and said there's going to be a rumour that Manchester City are coming for Kyle Walker and everyone's going to think it's true and everyone thinks it's going to happen, then you'd shake your head in disbelief because he was part of such a solid back four. And I think it's got to be an ode to Kieran Trippier, just the brilliant form that he's been in recently. But for me, it's got to be Walker. Walker is definitely the better player.
I totally agree with what you said, but I will play devil's advocate because we all love a transfer rumour when it comes to the summer. I think perhaps my theory, whether this is right or wrong, I don't know, but in terms of why he was perhaps dropped on last Sunday, I think it's because he had a bit of an iffy game against Palace, and I just think, like I said, Trippier has actually been a decent sort of servant when he's come in and been required, certainly as of late. So I just think perhaps he thought, okay, well, Walker's, as you've also touched on, can't really sort of play twice in a week, so maybe there was that logic behind it. And also, just in regards to whether he was to leave in the summer, I think if Tottenham were to lose one of their stars, and there are a lot of them now, I think he's probably the one that is expendable because the replacement is not such of a drop-off in quality. For example, if you were to lose Danny Rose to Manchester City, as good as Ben Davies has been over the sort of last couple of months, I think you'd really sort of feel it over the course of a season, especially selling it to someone like Man City. And also, I think you could envisage a situation or a scenario where if Kyle Walker was to leave Tottenham, I don't think he'd necessarily be as good as he is now at another club, because I think it's Pochettino that makes him the better player. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. We'll have to put that into the sort of the mix. There's a lot of conjecture behind it because we're reading now that, I read today, it's already silly season. We're getting Man City, Man United, and even Barcelona linked with him. So, I mean, he's probably an upgrade on any of those, because if you look at, say, Sergio Roberto for Barcelona, he's not quite Dani Alves, but Kyle Walker would be a very good fit at Barcelona, I imagine. But I'm seeing prices quoted of at least 35 million. But at the same time, for someone who's had, 7 years experience in the Premier League already, and probably another at least 7-8 years at the top level, full fitness, that's probably market rate. Do you not think?
Yeah, I think, you talking about prices and players nowadays is very different to how it used to be, because it's not just how good they are equates to how much they cost, because you've got to think about how important they are to the club, how important they are to the team, and I think Kyle Walker is very important to the team. I think as well as Kieran Trippier has done, I think Kyle Walker is the perfect right back for that system, as Danny Rose is the perfect left back for that system. Because we've seen that they keep their width, they really stretch that pitch apart and allow the players who are doing the more intricate bits and parts inside the middle of the pitch to have a bit more space and to do their thing. I think you're right in saying that. I think we probably underestimate Kyle Walker. He is, he's been at the top level of English football for a very long time now, and he's held his spot. He probably is worth the mega bucks. But I'm just questioning whether himself really would move on. I think they were talking about it on Match of the Day again this week that Tottenham are a very, very attractive club right now. You'd choose to go to Tottenham over someone like Arsenal, because Tottenham are on the upward spiral, whereas Arsenal are on the downward spiral. And I think you'd be mad to be a Spurs player and wanting to leave right now, whether that is because you're not playing every week, but it's not that he's not been playing every week. He's only been dropped for one game. So I think as you say, it's silly season. The media are looking for the biggest bite straight away. They're looking for the biggest scoop of the season, and I think this is probably a bit of a non-story, a bit of a panic story.
Do you think there's any possibility he's had his head turned? Because he's earning, reportedly 70 grand. And realistically, he could probably near double that if he was to move. Is there any sort of truth in that, where someone's had a word and think, if you're not playing, you missed out 2 key games, all of a sudden, sort of whispers in the background with a chance to sort of double your money overnight? Or is that...
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's always whispers. I'm sure those kind of whispers for every player on the team. But I've got faith that we've got a good, level-headed bunch of lads, and I'm hoping, as much as I'm thinking, that Kyle Walker will remain a Spurs player until next season.
Yeah, I certainly hope so too, because the last thing you want to see is this sort of star-studded squad getting pulled apart, certainly this early. I mean, maybe in 2-3 seasons' time, if, God forbid, we haven't still won a trophy and we've had a season at the new stadium and then things haven't kicked on further, then perhaps you could see the unfortunate splitting of the team. But I think for anyone to leave now, when, for use of a better word, the project is so sort of exciting, it's so nearly there, would be a strange decision. Not the weirdest one you've ever seen, but it's not something that I would advocate as a Tottenham player right now. But I just want to touch on a couple more things in the game while we're still going on. Yeah, you haven't tuned into the E-Spurs podcast. It is the E-Football one, so we try not to be all Spurs, but I just want to do a bit more. In regards to Tottenham's midfield with Wanyama and Dyer, you touched on a good point that Wanyama was sort of driving forward where perhaps he wouldn't usually do. Do you think that he was sort of had to have that role because of no Dembele? And do you not think at times, sometimes, when Wanyama and Dyer both play midfield, it's a little bit too safe, and it needed someone to sort of step up and take the midfield by the scruff of the neck because we lacked the drive that Dembele would usually give us?
I think, to be honest, not at all. Because you have got, when you play Dyer next to Wanyama, you get the grumbles that they're two defensive-minded midfielders playing in the same side together. They're both gonna. And it's a bit of a naive view to take of it because, at the end of the day, what are they going to do? They're not going to both sit in the same gap. They're not going to both do the same job. They're both very intelligent footballers. And so it's all about communication. If I'm sure they'll give each other a shout. One of them stays, one of them goes. And it wasn't just Wanyama doing the driving forward job. We saw Eric Dyer doing it, and that's when Wanyama slotted in. And so I'm sure that will have been addressed before the game. Both of you can't just sit in front of Vertonghen and Alderweireld and sweep up. You've got to have that midfield pivot that is usually provided by Wanyama and Dembele, because one stays, one goes. But with the two defensive-minded midfielders, you'd say you can't just expect both of them to sit back. But they're both intelligent and they're both energetic players. It's not like the old-fashioned central defensive midfielders who he's a big stocky bloke who tries to snap everyone who runs past him. It's not like that now. They're quick, they're energetic, they can pick a pass, they can get forward and they can join in the attacks. And Wanyama was the one who was doing it more. But we did see it from Eric Dyer. Eric Dyer isn't one to shy away from getting his head down and joining the attacks. We saw that when he used to play right back. Even when he played centre half, he used to have a little adventure every now and again. And so, I don't think there's a worry for a lack of energy or a lack of creativity if those two ever start in midfield again together.
Also, it's testament to Tottenham's flexibility, not just as a squad, but also in the game. The fact that Dyer sometimes is playing as a part of a back three, sometimes in the midfield. So I'm sure people would have had initial concerns not seeing Dembele on the starting 11, but as the game certainly grew into it, there was no real sort of concerns. And Tottenham, like you say, earlier in the podcast, they sort of bullied Arsenal midfield, and it was not really a fair matchup, really. Just one final question on the game, because we'll move on, because we've had a good chat, and deservedly so. But Harry Kane, was it a penalty?
Yes.
Right, okay.
And that is a completely unbiased view. I think you can't argue with it, and especially looking at, and I'm sure we will look at the other penalty decisions from the weekend. That's the most clear-cut one. I think there's a difference between being a cheat and being clever, and I'm sure we'll address that later. But he did take a knock. Yes, it wasn't enough of a knock to send a 15-stone man tumbling to the ground, but you can't tackle that clumsily in the box, and if you do, it's going to be a penalty.
Well, it does actually lead me nicely onto the penalty chat, so we'll carry on with this theme. But I think you're certainly right with Harry Kane. Obviously, take off the Tottenham bias, but it was a penalty simply because Gabriel's challenge was clumsy. It was lazy. You stick a foot out like that, inverted commas, invite the contact. So I sort of loathe to say it, but unfortunately it's the nature of how penalties get awarded in the Premier League. So Kane does his bit. I guess if you're not a Tottenham fan, or if that happened to you in any other game against you, you would be aggrieved, but it's one of those ones that you celebrate if it does happen. But on the balance of things, it was a penalty, wasn't it? So there's no wrong decision. But it does lead us nicely into the other two, and also the discussions of the Manchester clubs. We'll go to Old Trafford first. Rashford, he's bought that one, isn't he? Let's be honest. I think the referee's got that wrong, isn't he?
Yeah, that's the one that popped into my mind straight away. It's just blatant cheating, isn't it? You know, I think there was a little bit of doubt about that one because of the referee's position. The referee was absolutely miles away from that one, and I think you saw it just as Rashford hit the deck. The referee kind of sprinted a couple of yards a bit further forward to kind of rectify his position, but by then it was already too late. It was very convincing from Rashford because we see it so many times. The goalkeeper comes sprawling out, sliding across and takes the legs, especially if the striker's got there first. But there was no contact, and the goalkeeper's even put his arms behind his head to try and pull them back at the last minute. But I suppose it's part of the modern day game. It's going to happen if you get yourselves in those positions, which is a shame in one respect. It's clever in another respect, but players are going to keep on doing it if they keep on getting penalties. And so I think if there is something to be done about it, then it needs to be looked at after the game, and there needs to be some kind of incentive to stop players doing it. But they're winning penalties and they're winning games because of it. So it's going to keep happening. But Marcus Rashford, I'm sure he cringes a little bit when he watches that one back.
Yeah, I mean, the delay certainly doesn't help. I think it's one of those ones that referee, if he's not sure, he shouldn't be giving it. I think he's weighed that up, on the balance of probabilities and thought, well, okay, I think it's a penalty, but you've got to be certain, especially when you've got teams not only fighting for the top four, but Swansea are fighting for relegation. Those 2 points that technically they've dropped due to a draw, that could be, the difference between them staying up and going down this season. And also, does the amount of time taken to make that decision, does that advocate the use of video refs? Could we have used that time for someone to then look at that and go, you've got that wrong, it's not a penalty? Is that something that we're going to see creeping in because there's a natural sort of break in play there? Is that something that we need, or are we still going to be having human elements of things sort of going wrong? Because people say, because of the human element, it makes the game interesting. It gives us a talking point. But are we beyond talking points due to mistakes? Are we so much money in the game now that can we afford to keep making mistakes like this? Are we on the sort of watershed moment of video refs coming in sometime soon?
Personally, I hope not. The point you just made there about how the human error that gives you talking points. I hope that we stay as we are for that reason solely. Arguing over a pint whether it should have been a penalty or not been a penalty, I think that is what football is. That's what football is to me. That's what football is to a lot of fans. If we were sat here now saying, "Oh, the video referee did a very good job over Marcus Rashford's penalty," didn't we? It'd be a very short show.
We'd be out of a job, wouldn't we?
yeah, we'd have absolutely nothing to talk about. And I think that is what football is. That's what football is to me. Certainly, it's all about disagreements. The football itself is one big disagreement over what club you support. Football without disagreements is absolutely, it's soulless, it's faceless, and hopefully I just don't want to see it cut down into just run by robots. Wrong decisions, yeah, when they're against you they're horrible. When they're for you, you gotta give a cheeky wry smile. But I just don't think that video referees will enhance the game anymore. I think it will slow it down. We saw, I think, did you see the France game where the video referee was introduced, where the goal got disallowed?
Yeah, they trialled it, didn't they, in that friendly?
Yeah, and well, the goal was scored, the celebration happened, all the fans are on their feet, everyone's happy, jumpy, smiley, and then 2 minutes later the goal gets disallowed. I think it was just an awful anticlimax. I don't think it worked very well for me. But yeah, just going back to what you said about how important it is. Yeah, there's a lot of money in football, and it is really important, and it is, I suppose, it is jobs at stake. But I think it's just it's whether you want to sell the soul of the game down the river. Really, I think for me, I want to keep it in its most traditional form. You might think differently. No,
I don't. I want to keep it as it is because I think, like I say, it becomes too robotic then. And I think also you start bringing it in for penalties. Where do you draw the line? Because at least with goal line technology, I think that everyone was a bit nervy about that at first, but I think that's been to the benefit of the game because it's a black and white decision, isn't it? Where, we now know if it's a goal or it's not a goal, and I think we're better for it. I think it's much better. But I still think anything like a penalty offside, there's still going to be a subjective element, and no matter how many people watch it on a video screen, because why are people then discussing offsides and such, or penalties in Super Sunday and things like that? So it doesn't matter how many eyes are now on it, it's never going to be a final answer. So I don't think it's something that should be crept into the game. But unfortunately, I don't think it's something that we can stop either, because if we're at the trial phase already for a game like Italy-Spain or Italy-France, and I think we're unfortunately nearly there, and I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, to be honest. But what can we do? We can't sort of stop change, but whether the game is improved because of it, I doubt it. But people are for it, so unfortunately you can't halt progress. But how do you define progress? I don't know. We'll touch on the actual performances for Manchester City and United in a bit. I've just got to do the social media bits. So as always, if you want to follow us on Twitter or Instagram, it's at @e_footballnet. If you want to follow us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/efootballpage. If you want to follow us on the website, it's www.efootballonline.com. If you've got any questions for the show, you can tweet my personal page at DanTracy1983, or you can also tweet @e_footballnet. So that's all the social media bits and bobs. We'll be back after this very short break. Hello, welcome back. Our next stop is Manchester. We touched on the penalty. We've also mentioned that it was at a draw and 2 points dropped for Man United, a point game for Swansea. But once again, United, they seem to always have an opportunity to finish in the top 4. I know the season's not over yet, but they never seem to sort of kick the door down, do they? It's always another draw at home. And this run of 25 games unbeaten, for you, is it probably the worst run of the 25 games unbeaten you've ever seen?
Yeah, I think it's had something like 13 1-all draws in it. But it's so uninspiring, and you can see a little bit of media bias poking its ugly head here and there when it's glorified as a 25 game unbeaten run. I think if you draw 5 games, is that 5 games without a winner? Is that 5 games unbeaten? There's 2 ways of looking at it. United, I think they're just experts at not being able to kill off a game. I think they're always going 1-0 up, but they're always managing to lose that lead. And I think if there wasn't the whole Ander Herrera on the goal line hype, I think they'd be able to hold their hands up and say they were beaten by an absolutely brilliant free kick. But God knows what was going on there. I think it just distracted everyone. The fact that Herrera decided to put himself online. Sigurdsson was really quick with his thinking, actually, in telling Llorente to get up on the goalkeeper, but then Herrera running back out and giving Sigurdsson a marker of where to stick the ball, and we all know how good Sigurdsson is from those set piece positions, and it's right in the postage stamp. No goalkeeper in the world is going to get anywhere near that, and then from there it's a 2 points loss for Man United.
Yeah, and to be honest, it was nothing that Swansea didn't deserve. I mean, you could talk about its justice for the penalty in the first half, but the way Swansea started the game, I thought they were excellent. If you, to the untrained eye, if you watch those 2 teams, you'd think Swansea were like battling in the top 6 and Man United were struggling to stay up, because the way Swansea sort of dominated the midfield, Rooney pressed back, and I thought they were excellent. Like the way they started the game, they should have sort of got the noses in front if it wasn't for De Gea and perhaps a little bit of wayward finishing. But they've got a point, and Hull must have thought at the start of the day, like, brilliant, we're 3 points clear, we're probably going to stay 3 points clear at the end of the weekend. But it's as you were again. I mean, how vital will Jakupovic's save be come the end of the season? I mean, they can't seem to break the results, can they? Everything Hull do, Swansea do, be it win, draw or loss. So it's probably more frustrating for Swansea that they can't seem to close the gap yet. I mean, is there any change in your opinion as to who's going to go down? Because for me, it's sort of, I don't know, it's still a 50-50 really. Cause I can still see Swansea getting vital points, but Hull were getting better each week. They're sort of growing with confidence. So what's your opinion on this one? I still think Swansea, I still think Swansea will be the ones to avoid the drop. I think they've got the players, they've got, your Gylfi Sigurdssons and your Llorentes who are just capable of that little bit of brilliance, who can, you can pull it out the bag, and we saw that against United with Sigurdsson's free kick, and I think they're the kind of the moments of brilliance, of spark that the Hull really don't have. They haven't got the players who can provide that. But I think I said Hull would be the 3rd team to go down. So if Hull are the ones to go down, then
it's a bottle of champagne for me, isn't it?
You went for Bournemouth, Hull, and Middlesbrough, so not quite the champagne. You can have some prosecco if you get Hull, but yeah.
On reflection, the whole Sunderland to stay up thing probably wasn't the best idea, but yeah, I think Swansea have got just those players who can pull something out of nothing, and that's namely Gylfi Sigurdsson. I think if anyone's going to keep Swansea up, it'll be all down to him, to be honest.
Well, if we actually look back at our relegation tips from a few weeks back, we both went for Bournemouth because I think we were writing their obituaries a bit too early, so we both went for them. I went for Sunderland and Middlesbrough, so I'm sure to get 2 out of 3. You might get Hull and Middlesbrough, but Jason has gone for Sunderland, Middlesbrough and Hull, so he might get a clean sweep. Or Ryan, the midfield general, went for Sunderland, Middlesbrough, Swansea. So one of them is going to get it bang on. I don't know who, though. Talking about Middlesbrough, though, is there any hope for them? Because they're going to feel a bit aggrieved themselves with their penalty decision that went against them. That's another 2 points dropped. You don't want to write them off just yet, but, I mean, picture this scenario, for example. If Hull and Swansea both lose at the weekend, and Middlesbrough, they've got Chelsea, they might think, well, do you know what? If we actually put our fingers out and we win here, we're still in the race to sort of stay up. Is there any hope for them? I know mathematically there is hope, but I mean, are we getting a bit ahead of ourselves and trying to make a situation that doesn't exist, or could there still be one final sting in the tail?
I think this is a really big weekend for them, and I think that they'll feel so aggrieved at that penalty decision this weekend because, you know, having watched that Man City Borough game, it was like a whole new team. I have been not so complimentary of Middlesbrough in recent weeks because they've been just so poor, but they were absolutely brilliant against Man City, and Man City were shell shocked. You know, you looked at the lineups, and with Man City starting with Gabriel Jesus and Sergio Aguero up front, the both of them together, you writ them off straight away. But with Borough going 1-0 up, that miss-hit shot from Negredo, that gave them a bit of hope. But even then, when Man City equalised, it was like, oh, well, Man City are going to go on and score 3 or 4 now. And then for them to go 2-1 up again, it's just, you have to ask the question, where's that fighting spirit been the whole season? And so if they can do that against Man City, then surely they can do it against someone like Chelsea. But it's certainly be a bit more of an ask than playing Chelsea and then playing Man City. But you never know, that when a team's got something to play for, they can all of a sudden click together and they're going to need one of their leaders to grab them by the scruff of the neck and well, fingers crossed as a Spurs fan, they can pull something out the bag against Chelsea, please.
Yeah, I think the key is going to be whether or not they're still, staying up, still a viable concern at that point. Because if Swansea and Hull do get positive results, dare I say, if they get a win, for example, and then Middlesbrough's job is almost sort of out of reach, then you'd think, well, how much are they really going to fancy it and how much are they going to go for it? Hull have got Sunderland at home on Saturday. That's, a given, because Sunderland are done and dusted, so there's nothing really to play for them. Swansea have got Everton, which isn't going to be easy. So, it's a big ask for Middlesbrough. Perhaps if it was flipped the other way, it was at the Riverside, then you'd think, perhaps maybe. But we'll go on to Chelsea now, and we keep talking about cleared hurdles, and the way they sort of celebrated on Sunday, I think they sort of celebrated with the fact that they probably felt Tottenham were going to drop points. But once again, they showed the class of champions, because at half-time we all got a bit excited and thought, well, hang on, the title race really is on. But unfortunately, from a Spurs fan's point of view, Chelsea just dug in and got what they needed once again, didn't they? Yeah,
I think it was a shame. Everton, they weren't great, to be honest. The highlights actually made Everton look a lot better than they actually were. Because the highlights showed the Calvert-Lewin chance, the Lukaku causing trouble, and really none of it really happened. It was Chelsea they took the 0-0 at half time, but it always looked like they were going to win, and it was just that the spark of that absolutely awesome Pedro goal that started it off, and from then on Everton were a damp squib. Their heads were down, and Chelsea could have gone on to score more. It was probably a blessing that they only scored 2 more after that, and they were both really good goals. I think Chelsea's celebrations, you might be right in saying that they were with the thought that the Spurs would slip up against Arsenal. Or I think, it depends who you think was favourites. They probably thought that Arsenal would do them a job, but I think they kind of know that they're in the driving seat. They kind of know that the teams that they're coming up against now aren't going to be the most difficult teams, whereas Spurs have got a bit more of a difficult fixture list. Well, a lot more of a difficult fixture list, with Man United still battling for that top four and West Ham being West Ham. So I think they just know that they're edging closer and closer. There were some real celebrations. Conte was going absolutely crazy at the end. So I think they know that they can smell it. It's right there. It's there for them to take.
Yeah, because it's like I say. I think the fact it's a 4-point gap. I think Chelsea are comfortable in the knowledge that Tottenham are going to have to win all 4 as a given, because you just can't really see Chelsea like drawing 2 or losing 1. Do you know what I mean? It's going to have to take a big effort from Tottenham anyway, because you can't just see Chelsea dropping points. Tottenham are winning but standing still. That's how good Chelsea are. No matter how good Spurs have been, Chelsea have just been relentless. Against Everton, for example, like the first half, I think Everton were comfortable. They weren't quite the Everton that we've seen. Well, they weren't the Everton we've seen at Goodison part of the season. They never really sort of grabbed a hold of the game. Like you say, the early chance, if you watched 10 minutes of the game, you thought, oh, actually, Everton have given it a go. But they never really. And if you were to pick any of the 2 teams that were going to go up through the gears at half-time, it was going to be Chelsea. Perhaps it was always going to need a moment of brilliance, but that's exactly what there was. And Pedro's goal was not too dissimilar to the one that he scored against Tottenham at Stamford Bridge, but once he left his foot, it was unstoppable. And once Chelsea were in front, they were unstoppable. And like I say, Everton, they capitulated really, and it was quite an un-Everton-like performance. But then again, Chelsea absolutely thumped them at Stamford Bridge, so perhaps they've had their number. What will be interesting this weekend, though, is the fact that Tottenham play on Friday and Chelsea play on Monday. So if Tottenham can win against West Ham, which is not a given, of course, because that's going to be feisty, a London derby, and that's never a dull game between those two. But if Tottenham can cut the gap to a point and Chelsea don't play till 72 hours later, is that going to make for somewhat of a nervy long weekend for Antonio Conte's men?
I think that the pressure might be something that the United that's not the United players, that the Chelsea players will thrive under. I think he's got a very not experienced in the normal way, but they know how to win titles. They've got a lot of players in there who have won titles before, and so I think even if Spurs do go and pick up the 3 points, cut the gap to 1 point, I think they'll be able to remain level-headed. I'd love to think that it would crank up the pressure, and that is all Spurs can do now. It's all they can do is win their games, crank up the pressure. Alternatively, if Spurs go in and slip up against West Ham, a draw or a loss, Chelsea, that gives them even more of an incentive to go out and absolutely batter them and all but seal the title. I think, Spurs definitely have the chance to crank up the pressure, and I'd absolutely love them to. Obviously, I'd love them to beat West Ham first and foremost, and then crank up the pressure on Chelsea. But I just think that group of Chelsea players, they kind of have it together. If it was the other way round, I'd be worrying about the Spurs side, because it's an inexperienced group. They've never really won anything. But this Chelsea side, they've been champions before, a lot of them, and I think Conte especially, he's been a champion before. He'll be a champion again. Yeah,
they are just an unstoppable blue machine, unfortunately. I mean, if they do win the league, which they more than likely will, they'll deserve it, because they have. Tottenham have won probably the nation's hearts because of the way they've been playing football at the moment, but Chelsea are going to win the competitions because they've just been that little bit better. That's dealing with the league and probably the FA Cup, which we touched on the podcast last week. But also, as always, the race for top 4. I didn't watch the Liverpool game yesterday because I had a bit of football fatigue after Sunday. Watching 3 Premier League games in a row does take it out of you, and I was a bit like, oh, I'll give the Watford Liverpool miss. But I have seen the goal that Emre Can scored, which is absolutely fantastic. But more importantly, it does let Liverpool, well, they're in the race for the top 4, but it does put it back into their own hands. They've got quite the easier running compared to City United, so they must be over the moon with that win. It wasn't a classic performance by Liverpool, but it's the kind of result they needed after losing to Palace the week before, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And scraping results is what you've got to be able to do. Spurs scraped the result at Palace. Chelsea have scraped a result here and there. It's what you need to do to be able to get into that top 4. For me, I think Man City, because of their squad, I think they could still be the favourites. But Liverpool, you're right in saying that it's in their hands now. But we've said it many times before on this podcast that you never know which Liverpool team's going to show up. Liverpool are fairly inconsistent in a way, Man City too, to be honest. But I think that one's going to really come down to the wire. It'll be a very interesting watch who gets that fourth spot. And I for one, I'm glad that Spurs aren't involved in it, because I'd be getting pretty twitchy by now. Going back to the goal, wow. I think there's going to take some beating if there's going to be a different goal as goal of the season. I think the Mkhitaryan and Giroud scorpion kick and then Andy Carroll's overhead kick, I think they're probably all on the same level. But then this is a level above. Jogging backwards, jumping overhead kick into the top corner. I think that's one hands down for me.
Yeah, and for me, I think if there was any criticism, not from Liverpool, I think Nordin Amrabat should have put his head through it and just at least had a go. But I think that's probably doing the goal disservice, because it was that good a goal. We shouldn't really be picking holes in it. I think, certainly goal of the season for me. I'm glad that Match of the Day isn't a fan vote anymore, because Arsenal fans would be lighting up social media and voting for Giroud. So I'm glad, it's independently judged again. So I'd be very surprised if Emre Can doesn't get goal this season, and deservedly so. Just want to touch on Watford. Their season, it's never really gone anywhere, to be fair. I mean, they've never really been sort of threatening Europe or threatening relegation at the same time. But there must be a bit of a worry for Matt Sarri that he needs to finish this season strongly, because they're 13th now, I think, and they realistically can finish anywhere between 9th and 16th, such is the nature of the Premier League table. Would a weak sort of finish in the sort of bottom rungs of the table put his job at risk, and do you reckon he could be one for the sack in the summer?
I think this one is kind of I think they're just really just crawling to the finish line. I think that, but the fans might have a bit of a say. They might, if they do end up in 16th, I think they'll be fairly disappointed. But then again, the team's got nothing to play for. They've had nothing to play for all season. You're right in saying they haven't really been battling relegation. They haven't been even pushing for the top half, and I think it's been kind of nailed on where they're going to finish all season. In terms of the sack, I think he'll probably be in charge come start of next season, but then I think he could be maybe an early sacking in next season. That's what I'd put my money on, unless a more attractive prospect of a manager arises, which I can't see there being anytime soon. So I think Masari will probably just coast until the end of the season. Watford will probably, I can see them finishing 14th, 15th, basically because they've got nothing to play for. But I think he'll survive in his job. They'll give him a summer to try and bring the players in that he wants. And if it doesn't work out at the start of next season, then I think he'll be the first one to go.
It is quite hard to sort of even pick who would finish in 9th and 10th, because that area of the table changes every week. Like I say, from 9th to 16th, like Palace the week before were 12th. They've dropped down to, I think, 15th now. And it's incredible how sort of 2 wins can take you up the top half in your season, finishes strong and everything's not too bad, but then 2 defeats and it's all, well, we're underperforming and such is in danger of losing his job. So I guess in the grand scheme of things that they're not, could be a lot worse. It could be 17th, 18th. But these owners, they don't want to be all finishing in the bottom half of the table. They want to be sort of pushing for glory. So I think it just highlights the competitive nature of the Premier League. Do you not think?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, definitely. But you're right. It does change every week. I can see there being a lot more changes. There's still 4 or 5 games to go. I think a lot more could change down the bottom, especially just in that part above the relegation zone, in between the relegation zone and mid-table. A lot can change there, but I'm not sure if it'll be too much significant change personally. I think teams would rather be pushing for the top half, but I think that's kind of not going to happen now. It's between 9th and 16th, and I'd say that Southampton are probably going to tie up that 9th spot for me. They've got the best squad out of all of them there. So I'd say it will change, but it won't have too much of an effect on how next year's Premier League lines up.
Yeah, I mean, in all fairness, the positions aren't of relevance really. I mean, I know there's prize money, but it's all the same prize. It doesn't get you Europe. It's not going to relegate you. So there's probably pride at stake, but it's literally just a number. Although that said, a big win for Burnley at the weekend, because they weren't in apparent danger or immediate danger. But if they had lost that and Hull and Swansea getting points, the gap would have just closed a bit more. So they would have been finally glad to. The right time to get an away win at this point of the season. It's just taking away any nerves, and they'll be back in the Premier League next season. So that's got to be a job well done for Sean Dyche, do you not think?
Yeah, it's definitely a monkey off their back with the first away win of the season. I think it's more of a sentimental win more than anything, just to kind of let's get that one out of the way, because that's a record that certainly would have been unwanted, and they'll be glad to get it out of the way, and that'll put them in good stead for next season. Sean Dyche did a very good job again this season.
I think with any team of that nature, you've always got to fend off second season syndrome. One player who probably won't be playing is Joey Barton after his 18th month ban. I don't know if you've got a view on that, James. I've laughed. I know I probably shouldn't, but
I don't think he'll be the biggest miss for Burnley anyway. So
yeah, I mean the only problem is that if he's not playing on the field, he'll be a pundit, and I hate his punditry because he thinks he's like the erudite thinking man's pundit, doesn't he? When he's just not really.
Yeah.
So,
posting deep tweets and all this. No. I'll be unfollowing him and switching off the TV if he's on it.
That's wise advice that you should all follow from James. That covers the Premier League for this week. I just want to drop down the level to the Championship because there's a few stories, and one has been a bit more pertinent today. I don't know your views on Huddersfield, because I know you touched on you're a Birmingham boy. Are you a bit miffed that David Wagner pretty much played a reserve team, or is he justified in doing that because he's got playoffs to come in a couple of weeks, and obviously he wants to sort of keep that squad fresh to really go for the big prize? So where do you stand on that one? I mean, if you try and remove yourself from having a Birmingham interest, is he right in doing that? Is that allowed, or should they face the sort of the music that the EFL were asking him to put their case across?
I think he could be. In a little bit of trouble, to be honest. And that's without my bias completely. The argument is he has to field his best team, and it has to be what he thinks is their definitely their best team. And to make so many changes, it can't possibly be their best team, and it's just completely unfair on the other teams. Really, it's completely unfair on anyone else that can go down. It's unfair on Forest. It's unfair on Blues. It's unfair on everyone involved in that scrap. And so, but then again, you've got to flip it over and say Huddersfield have got some really important games coming up. And so I think he could have shot himself in the foot a little bit because he could be in a little bit of trouble, but I think he could have just rested, 4, 5 maybe and got away with it. But how many was it? 9 that he changed?
Yeah, it was wholesale changes.
It's just a bit unfair and a bit unsportsmanlike, really. But then again, when there's so much money involved in promotion to the Premier League, I suppose it was always going to happen. And I'm glad that Blues managed to get the result anyway. I was bouncing off the walls with that one. I'm hoping that my hometown club managed to stay up. I'm based in Nottingham now, though.
Oh, gee, that's going to be interesting.
So hopefully those two stay up. I'm sorry, Blackburn fans, if you're listening, and you'll be going down if it's my choice.
I went to watch Brighton Blackburn a couple of weeks back, or probably about a month or so ago, and it was dire. Not from Brighton's point of view, just Blackburn. Paid £30 for the privilege, which is another issue. How Championship tickets are really expensive. Like, you wouldn't pay that for the Premier League. It's just outrageous money. But anyway, going off on a tangent. But yeah, the football they played was awful. I mean, Tony Mowbray has done a good job to get them where they are, because they were a bit of a lost cause before he took over. But yeah, I'd say Blackburn to go down. Maybe Forest as well, because they've been sort of stinking the place out for a bit. But I think that's more because the owner sort of managed to climb, really, wasn't it, of Fawaz. He doesn't want to sell even if they get relegated. So, but then again, that's a plight about owners coming in and mucking things up, which you could point at Leyton Orient, Coventry, Blackpool, etc. So there's questions to be asked about the EFL. Touching on Huddersfield, I guess it's his prerogative because he's got the playoffs, and obviously there's so much money at stake. Then obviously he wants to give himself the best possible chance to get Huddersfield promoted. But also it does then again raise the issue of why have this thing of registered squads? Like, why make a point of having 25 men in a squad if all of a sudden 14 of them are deemed not good enough to play? Does that not highlight its own issue?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, that was actually an argument that I heard on the day. Actually, was how you could argue that those players, those 9 players who were brought in, just had a really good training session that week, and so all of a sudden deserved to be in the first team squad. Whether that had stand up in court, I don't know. But
yeah, I don't know if you can prove that one.
No, but I still think it's very unsportsmanlike, and I think you should try and win every game that you can. And think about the supporters who paid their money to go and watch that game. Did they get a discount because they were watching their second team play? No, of course they didn't. They were paid the same amount of money. They wanted to watch the players that they want to watch every week and instead they watched Birmingham City miss a penalty, have a man sent off, and still win the game. So yeah, it's not. It's a bit of an ethical debate, if you ask me, but it's not one that we can affect at the end of the day.
That's right. I think ultimately it's a bit murky, isn't it? It's a grey area. It's not necessarily legal, depending on how the EFL actually rule on it, but it's going to leave a sour taste in the mouth. If Blackburn or Forest get relegated on the basis that Birmingham won last week, then questions are going to be asked, but who's really got the definitive answer? One definitive answer I will try and get out of you is who's going to win the Championship? Is it going to be Brighton or Newcastle? Are Brighton going to bottle it after already getting promotion? Because they've lost the last two. Are they going to blow it on the last day, or are they going to finally get over the line, do you reckon?
Surely not. That loss against Bristol City was absolutely shocking. I can't believe it, because those fans must have turned up expecting an absolute party and got left with that. I think they'll just edge it. Yeah, I'd like to see Brighton edge it after what Newcastle did to us last season. They're still in my bad books, and so yeah, for me, hopefully Brighton. And so me saying that, it will probably be Newcastle.
I hope it's Brighton, because I lived there for 8 years, so I've still got a bit of more than a soft spot for it. I wouldn't say they're quite my second team, but I do keep an eye out. So I hope they do finally get over the line, and I'll look forward to enjoying the Premier League, because it's a great piss up. So look forward to that away, fans.
Lovely away day.
Yes, lovely away day. But that hour's flown by. So as always, James, I've got to thank you for being not just the sole guest, but the great guest.
Not a problem, mate. I think we always meant to pull it out of the bag, don't we?
Yeah, we always dig deep when it's needed, so no worries there. I hope you'll be back next week. I certainly will. So it just leaves me to say, my name's Dan Tracy. This is the eFootball Podcast. Until next week, good night.